8 months of the 11th Simple Whatnots Miniature Club. We did it. Hey, this is Carrie with Canary Quilts, and this is month 8, the last month of the 11th Simple Whatnots Miniature Club. And I love this. I have loved every minute of doing these little miniature quilts. Number one, I love miniature quilts. Number two, I love the colors. They are just right up my color palette. And I've learned a lot doing these. I've done different blocks. There's some blocks in this I've never done before. Like I've never done a plus sign quilt, and I really wanted to do a plus sign quilt, and it came in this miniature quilt club. This I can hang out at Christmas because it looks like a poinsettia. I don't remember the name of this, but that's not what it was. But it looks like a poinsettia quilt. And the rest of these are just small enough that I can hang them around my house in little pockets on the wall that need something. And that little guy is just the size of a piece of paper. But anyway, month 8 is called Twist and Turn? Yeah, Twist and Turn. That's what it's called. This was not too hard. There's a lot of, you need to cut your blocks separately because it's not a mix and match like in a lot of the other ones. These blocks keep the same colors within them. So you kind of have to cut them individually, which I show you. And yeah, putting them together, it goes together kind of on a diagonal here. So that's a little bit different to put together. And you'll see me make a mistake, which I thought I could live with and decided I couldn't. So stay tuned for that one. And then I'm going to show you my quilting, and I'm going to show you my binding also. So I just did a meander. I was thinking circles, I was thinking feathers, but I really wanted the quilt top to stand out and not the quilting per se, so I just did a meander in it. But I want to thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. It's been so much fun to do this. It's been so much fun to get comments from you. There is going to be a 12th Simple Whatnots Miniature Club coming up at the end of the year. So stay tuned here and I'll let you know as soon as it comes out, because I had a lot of people who were interested in this and they didn't find it fast enough to to get into the club or order the materials. So stick around here. I'm going to throw up a picture of the 12th because they do have the quilts. A picture of the quilts. So here's a picture of the 12th Simple Whatnots Miniature Club that's going to be coming up at the end of this year and probably being sent out at the beginning of next year. That's how this one worked. It looks like that's how the next one's going to work. So yeah, I'll let you know as soon as I find out when it's ready to pre-order or order. So stay tuned. But yeah, let's get started making number 8. And then we'll take a couple month break before we start the next ones. So I wanted to let you know in this video that I talk about some of the tools that help me get my quilting done. And I'm going to put links to those down below if you think they would help you. I'm only showing you things that I think help me. So I'm not going to just show you things. I feel like these things really do help my productivity and make it easier for me to quilt or make it more beautiful. So check out the links to those products below. I would really appreciate it. It does help the channel out a lot. And I just want to let you know I really appreciate you too. So if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and you'll get, especially notification bell, you get notified every time I do like quilt-alongs like this one. Sometimes they take a long time, like this one took 8 months. We got 8 quilts out of it. Some quilt-alongs I do weekly, and some of them are there's free patterns. So yeah, just stick around here, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, and let's have a blast. Okay, to get started on the last quilt in our 11 Simple Whatnots Club, this one is called Twist and Turn. Let me show it to you. There we go. That's what it's going to look like. And as with all of these, the cutting it takes some time to cut these out, but it's not really that hard to cut out. So basically in Twist and Turn, we're going to have two different blocks. We're going to have block A, which looks like this, and we're going to have block B, which looks like this. And we're going to have 12 of block A and 6 of block B. So you're just going to be cutting rectangles and squares out of all your pieces here. So I started with the cream color. So I have 12 sets. You have to keep them in sets because each set has 2 of one color, and I kind of tried to go light and dark or contrasting. So you got 2 of one color, and you've got 6 of another color of these squares. Then you've got four of the cream squares, and then 2 of the cream rectangles. And the cream colors need to stay the same also. So it's not going to be scrappy like the other ones. You'll have to keep your creams together and your 2 colors the same here, basically. So you pick 2 colors and you make that your set. So I have light green, I have dark green, and then I have this as my cream color for this particular set. And then each set is the same. It's just going to have different colors, different backgrounds, different colors for the light and the dark in each set. So when I was cutting for my sets, I just went through my colors here and I just picked, like say I picked these 2 colors. Cut what I needed for the set out of that. So they do in the instructions have you cut per set. They don't have you cut a whole bunch, they just have you cut per set. So that's how I did it. I chose, I would say, take these 2 prints and this background, cut my set out. That's how I did all of these. I didn't cut in bulk at all. So I could keep track that I was having the same fabrics for the set. And I knew, you know, like I only needed like 2 of these and 6 of these. So that's how I cut for my sets right here. In each set, you'll have 6 in B and you'll have 12 in A. And B has these longer triangle backgrounds in it, and they have different colors here up top. But you just have to, like, you know, if you just cut for each set, you'll be in good shape for block A and block B. And then you take this brown and you cut these large triangles, and you've got your smaller triangles. So these are going to be what's on the side. Let me grab the pattern. So the large triangles that I cut are on the side here, and then the small triangles are in the corners. So that's how you cut these. That's what you're cutting them for. I shouldn't say that's how you cut them. So I'm sitting here with block A sets, and there's 12 of them, block B sets, and there's 6 of them, my corners and my side triangles, my binding, which I cut, and my backings right here. So that's all I need to get started. I wanted to show you how much fabric I had left. Yeah, it took that much fabric for each of these. For each block, didn't take much fabric. So that's what I have left. But anyway, I'm going to start with block A, set all this aside, set my binding aside, set my triangles aside, set my block B sets aside, and we can get started with block A, putting it together. So let's see how this goes together. Okay, let's start with that set first. And see how this goes together. So we need a square and we basically need a dark, and then we need a triangle. And then we're going to need our dark. I'm just calling it that because this is the one we have more squares of. Then our light, and then our dark, and then a square, a beige square. Now we need to do the same thing, but the beige square goes over here. Dark, light, dark, and then looks like the opposite on the bottom. So that is how our square, block A, is going together. Yep, that looks cool. Okay, so we are going to be putting each row together, and we are always ironing towards these dark colors. That's how every row is in here. Iron towards the dark color. No matter what block you have, your dark is going to be the ones where you have the 6 of the square colors, and then the light is going to be the 2 squares. So always iron towards these dark colors. That's pretty simple to remember. There we go. We can start sewing that together. So yeah, at this point I think I'm just going to sew a block at a time, just so I don't get too messed up with it. So let me get my sewing machine set up. Let me get my iron on, and we'll get this sewn together, see how we iron our seams and how that goes. Okay, I'm over here at my machine, and I've got my block set up in front of me. I've got my iron pad here ready to go, and my little chain piece cutter, because I'm going to do the first 2 rows in each one of these here. First, I've got my 1/4 inch foot in. I've got Aurifil thread, actually this time in the top and the bottom. And I've just got a beige color, just a neutral color. So I'm going to grab the first 2 squares. Get these cut, and then we are going to iron, in my case, towards that red square. Okay, get these back over here. This one goes on the bottom, and this one goes here, this one goes there, and there. So, the top and bottom rows are going to be complete once we get this rectangle on. Middle row, I'll just take the next square in line and sew that on. You always want to make sure that light color is sandwiched between your dark color, and that you have your cream on the end. So get these ready to sew or iron towards our dark, and in my case that's the red. So there's all those pieces. Top and bottom are done. So I'm going to set those aside for now. And you just want to make sure your light is sandwiched. So I need to sandwich this one and add it, and that you have a cream on the end. So this one I'm adding the cream on the end because I already have my light and dark sandwiched. Iron towards that red piece always, or the dark. It's going to be a different color every block. And now you can put it together. So that's how we're going to put our block together, each of the rows. So the only seams we have to match are right here, And then we have these seams here in the middle we'll have to match. So I'm going to put the first 2 rows together, bottom 2 rows together, and then we can put the 2 halves together. So let's match up those seams. Look at that, I didn't iron towards the red. Well, am I a doofus or what? Well, let's just come back and iron towards the red. Or the dark. Yep. I'm a doofus. But I fixed it. And I'm going to get these 2 rows sewn, and I'm sewing the side I pinned. That's very important. Pin the side you're going to sew. Okay, we're going to be ironing towards the row that has the most color in it right now. So, just like that. And then same thing with this row. We're going to iron towards that row that has the most color in it, which is basically the 2 center rows right now. The 2 rows in the center we are ironing towards. So now we're ready to put our 2 rows together. So now we're going to put the block together here and we're going to nest these 3 seams right here in the middle. So I'm going to get this sewn together. So there's our block, and when we open it, this will be the top left corner, so we're going to iron towards that top part of the block. There is our first block. We are going to make 12 of these, just like that. Okay, there we go. Got all 12 of our block A's done. So, not too hard to put together. Yeah, I was doing 1 block at a time just because I wanted to keep the colors and keep everything in the right order. So, there's my 12 block A's. So now we can get started on block B. And there is only 6 block B's. Woohoo! So, let me grab my block B's. I'm going to take one of them. Take this one. This is how our block B is going to be laid out. So to lay this out, we want to take our two of our cream squares, and this is actually a rectangle. And we'll lay it out so that the rectangle lays this way. But then we're going to come down here with these dark rectangles and put them this way, and then put our center block in there. We've only got one of these pieces. And then we're going to come back and do the same as the top row. Put our squares out and then lay our rectangle like this. So, top and bottom, these center rectangles are laying this way. Middle rectangles are laying this way. We will assemble this first, this little 9 patch. And then we're going to add these onto the sides. And then once those sides are put on, we're going to add these to the top. So that's how our block is going to look. But the first thing we want to do is put together this 9 patch. And we'll always be ironing towards these dark pieces. So pretty simple. Okay, I'm over at my machine. I got my block laid out up here. I'm ready to iron here. I'm ready to sew here. So let's just start putting our 9 patch together. Now we're going to assemble the rows. And we can nest these seams right along here. So let's put these together. And that top row is not as wide as the center row. So don't be alarmed by that. So this 9 patch, we're going to be ironing towards the top and bottom row or away from the center row, however you want to think about it. Add this side, nest those seams, and our little 9 patch will be done. Again, iron away from the center towards the outside of the block. We want to take these shorter strips and we're going to put them onto the side of these blocks. Sew those on, and we are ironing towards the strip. Iron towards the strip or away from the 9 patch. Now we want to take those longer strips and we're going to put them on the top and the bottom, and our little block B will be done. And these are going to get ironed towards the strip also. Pretty simple to put together. So we can put all 5 of them together exactly like that. That didn't take long at all. Okay, here are my 6 block Bs. They turned out really cool. I like them. So we are now ready to start assembling the quilt top. So let's get it laid out. So let me get these stacked. These 6, these 12. Kind of set them over here. And then I've got my larger triangles and my smaller triangles. So let's put a smaller triangle up here in the corner. Yep, you can see that. Put it there. And then we need to put one of our block A's, like this, with I'm looking at it as this rectangle is on the top left-hand side. So all of our block A's will sit this way. So now this corner is going to have one of these and one of these. So next, we're going to grab another block A. Left-hand corner has the rectangle. Then we're going to grab a block B and another block A, left-hand corner up there. And we're going to take our big triangles and set them right here. So we will be assembling these in rows. This is a row, and this is a row. And now we'll build the next row. Okay, so I worked in rows. This is a row. This is a row. This is a row. This one starts with a small triangle, ends with a large triangle. Then this row starts with a large triangle, ends in a small triangle. So you can see all the rows. Okay, one thing to remember as you're putting the rows together is you will always be pressing away, not against, away from these twisted blocks. So you're also going to be pressing towards the B block or the triangle, but always away from these block A's. So remember that as you're going along. Always press against these away from these block A's. I'm going to start down here and I'm going to line up the corner. You want to sew this side, and I'm going to pin it because you could accidentally sew this side. And you don't want to do that. You want to sew this side. There's my seam. It's going to look like that. And we are always ironing away from block A. No matter what row we're in, always away from block A. Okay, so this is going to go in there like this. Put it on here. Line up the corner here. Make sure your sides here match, but sew this side. Seam, iron away from block A. Okay, so I've got my little triangle. So this sits down here like this. And I've got the little triangle that was right here. So I'm going to put that on. And I guess the way that I'm going to center it is make sure that my point is on that center seam. Iron away from block A. Okay, so my corner is done. I'm going to set this aside so I have more room and just work away from me so I can eventually bring this over here and be able to iron. But I've got my corner done. So let's go back down here. Let's start with this row. Put your triangle together. And then I'm going to line it up and repin it. So the side I pinned is the side I'm going to sew. This is a block A. I'm going to iron away from it. So block B, you want to have your longest strip on the top. So you still are not going to have any seams to match here. There's my seam, and now I'm going to iron away from block A. So I put that on wrong. I need my rectangle in the upper left. Over here on this row, we've got our small triangle. I'm going to center it. Okay, there we go. We got that light out now. It is weird working on an angle or diagonal. So now all we have to do is put these rows together. And because we ironed everything towards the A pieces, these seams will be in opposite directions. They should nest. So these rows right here are going to get ironed this way. And then these rows right here are going to get ironed this way. So let's start up here. And we'll nest the block seams. So here's the center block and here's the center block, and we will nest the seams there. And pin those seams, and then pin in between, make sure everything's lined up. And we are going to sew this. And then we are ironing it towards the corner, so this way. And we are going to iron it towards the corner. Now we will put this row goes here. And we are going to line up these seams right here. These 4 seams in the middle. Okay, this is going to be the last seam that we iron towards this corner. Every seam from here on is now going to get ironed that way, but this seam will get ironed towards this original corner that we started with. Okay, so this last row I ironed towards the corner I'm working on now, and then this one I'm also going to iron towards that corner. Well, isn't that just adorable? It is. Got some little dog tails here, dog ears cut off, but yeah, you can see it's just a little mini quilt. Yeah, that turned out really cute. Just make sure block A's are all oriented the same way. And then block B's have the long strip edge on the top and the bottom, I guess. Not against their side blocks. Not taking it apart. Not taking it apart. I can live with that. It's kind of hard to see. Now that I've pointed it out, it's easy. I'm going to set this aside for tonight and come back and we will get it quilted tomorrow. But yay, if you're this far, congratulations. Good job. I decided overnight that I couldn't live with it, or I shouldn't live with it. If I'm showing you how to do this, I should rip it out and redo it, which it wasn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to rip apart the whole quilt. I just had to take this out, and then these 2 seams out, and it might have taken 10 minutes. It did not take very long, so I redid it, and I'm happy I did. On to putting the backing on and quilting it. So here's my backing, gotta get it ironed, I gotta get it all sandwiched, and then I'm gonna come back and try to decide how I'm gonna quilt it. Didn't have much inspiration. I looked at the picture and it looks like there's circles. I don't know how successful I would be with circles in mine, so I don't know. Maybe while I'm putting it all together and going to my machine, I'll get inspired. But so when I come back, we'll be ready to quilt. So I just wanted to show you what I do with my quilts before I actually do quilting. Is I've got them, I use a spray baste which sticks them down, so it's stuck to the batting on the top and the backing is also stuck on the back. But I like to baste my edges before I start quilting. That way it doesn't accidentally pick up the edges if it comes unstuck. So I've got my walking foot in, I've got my machine set at 5 length stitch, which is the highest it goes, and I'm just going to baste this down. Okay, I am now ready to quilt. Still no inspiration. Maybe when I get over to my machine I'll have some. Just wanted to show you the thread I was going to use. It's a Sulky 40 weight rayon. I've used it on most of these little Simple Whatnot quilts. It just is a nice variegated thread that does well with top stitching, and the variegation, this gold color, looks really good with these fabrics. So just wanted to share with you the thread I'm going to be using. Okay, I'm over here at my other machine, which is a Janome 1600P QC. I use this for quilting and I use it for my bag making. And the other machine I have, which is the Janome Horizon 7700, I use for piecing and sometimes quilting, but it's only if I don't want to set this machine up. But this machine's been set up for quilting for a while, so it's pretty easy just to move on over here and start quilting. So I've got in my bobbin thread, this is Superior Threads Bottom Line 60 weight. Super thin, super strong, and I like to use it in my bobbin thread sometimes when I'm piecing and when I'm quilting. I've got this So Steady grid glider, which I bought it for the lines. Don't use it for the lines. Look at this, it just makes your quilt move really easy. So it's not getting stuck on any of these creases you may have in your table, where the table and the machine meet, or plate and stuff right here, these two plates. It doesn't get caught on that, it just moves around really nicely. And then I've got these gloves which have this stickiness right here so that you can grab your quilt and it doesn't move underneath your hands. So all these things are things you need for your, well, you don't need them. They make it much easier to quilt. So I've come over here, I thought about doing some feathers, but the more I look at this, the more I think the feathers in the quilting would stand out too much, and I want the top to be what people look at. So I'm just gonna do a simple meander so that the quilting doesn't overpower the top. I think feathers work well in negative space, and this is too small for that. So I'm just going to do a meander, let the quilt top stand on its own, but get it quilted to the back. So I've got my machine already set up. I've got the tension that's good for quilting, and I leave it there. All my threads done. For this machine, I need an HLX5 needle. And I have gone with Schmetz HLX5 7511. That seems to work for me really well in this machine. But what you need to do in your machine is just try out different needles, threads, tensions, and see what works well for you. So what I'm going to do is make sure my tension looks good, and the top stitch and the bottom stitch are good, and just kind of practice before I get onto my quilt. It'd help if I turn the machine on. So what I'm looking for is any pull on my curves and I don't see any, where the bobbin thread is getting pulled through the top, and I don't see any of that. And my bottom thread, it's probably hard for you to see, it really blends well. I'm looking for the top thread coming through and stretching in those curves, and I'm not seeing that either. So I think we're good to go to start. I think I'll just start up here in a corner and jump in from the edge and just start pushing my quilt around. And you really kind of need to work with how your quilt is positioned. There's nothing wrong with throwing it and pushing it around. You want to have as little material over here in the throat as possible. So let's get to quilting. Needle down helps. So what I'm doing is trying to do this half of the quilt first, so I have only a little bit of material in my throat. So I'm going to work from this edge over here, right here, to this edge up here, and then I can start to work back and start flipping it around, so I have not very much fabric in the throat over here. And there we go. Had to work with my bobbin halfway through, but everything was fine. And it's done. Wow, that took maybe all about 5 minutes. So yeah, that's what it looks like. On to trimming and binding now. Okay, there's my quilt. I just went around with a rotary cutter and cut right along the edge here. And it is ready for binding. So, got my binding. And what I'm going to do with my binding is I take one piece, and I take another, and I lay it face up, not face up, right sides together, perpendicular to each other, and then I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner so that it forms a straight piece just like that. There's my seam, corner to corner. You could draw a line if you want to. And then there's my binding. So I'm going to keep it open like that, grab my next piece, throw it on there on this corner, perpendicular, pin it in place, sew from upper left to bottom right. Okay, now that I have all my seams sewn, I'm going to trim approximately 1/4 inch away from them all. I am going to iron these seams open. Now, need to fold it in half, right sides together. There we go. Binding is done. So, ready to put it on the quilt. Okay, I'm over here at my machine, ready to put my binding on. Got my 1/4 inch foot in, and I still have my Orifil thread in the top and bottom. And I'm going to start on the short side of this quilt and I leave quite a bit here in the middle, and then I go to the edge, and I don't know, a few inches out is where I start, so that I have enough space in here to work with putting my binding together at the end. You don't want to have too little space, it makes it hard. So I'm going to start here. And I just have a regular stitch, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch until I'm 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and the way I can tell is there's a mark right here on my foot, a little ridge that's 1/4 inch. So when that ridge hits the edge of my quilt, I know I'm 1/4 of an inch out. And then, one more. And then what I do is, this is a new technique I learned. I pick it up and turn it so that it's pointing towards the corner, and I stitch right off the edge. And I'll show you why I do that in the end. I'm going to show you how and why, but it's to create less bulk in these corners. So I turn my binding up so that it lines up straight with this edge right here, and I've got a 45-degree angle going here. Hold it down, line up my top fold with the top edge, and then I start sewing right there. And I just do a little back stitch or a lock stitch right there, just because I've just always done that. Okay, I am on my last side, and I'm going to only sew in a couple of inches, so I have plenty of space to work with putting my 2 binding ends together. Okay, now we got to put our 2 ends together. That's how I do my binding. So I want this to be a little more towards the middle, so I'm going to cut right on this line. That looks to be about the middle. Okay, so my binding is 2.5 inches. What I do is I'm going to cut this at least the width of my, at most the width of my binding. So I could go out 2.5 inches and cut it here. I personally like to cut it 1/4 of an inch shorter. So I'm going to come out here. So there's my bottom binding right here. I'm going to come over here to my 2.25 inch mark and cut my top binding there. I just feel like, when I've done it at 2 inches, maybe my seam here isn't quite right, and it just ends up bulking up. 2.25 gives it that nice, it fits nicely because the fabric does have a little bit of stretch to it. Okay, to put this together, I want to take my bottom binding, and I'm just gonna keep it straight, fold it out like this. And this is where mini quilts are hard. And then I'm going to take my top binding and I twist it towards me and then lay it out. Perpendicular, just like we did when we were making our binding. And then I take some clips and I just kind of clip it there, and I test it before I go over. Because we're going to be sewing from top left to bottom right, I'm going to pin these in the top right and then pull it back, and that is going to work. It's going to fold correctly. So I now want to go over to my machine and sew. Yeah, these little quilts, that's the only thing about them. They're pretty hard to hold your binding. So let me clip here too. I am going to sew from top left to bottom right on the diagonal. Now I'm going to test it before I cut it, and it's going to work. So we will cut 1/4 inch from that seam and then finger press. Finger press our seam, and we're ready to finish out the binding. Start here and end there. Okay, I want to show you that new technique to help with bulk in the corners. So we sewed to the corner from here to there. Now we have a fold here, and you're just going to take some small scissors and you're going to cut in between the fold for this binding and the fold for this binding. So it is hard to see, but there is a fold you can put your scissors in and then just cut over to your other stitch. Don't cut into the stitch. So see, now you can see what I'm talking about here. This is the other binding here, and that's that seam we made to the corner. So you just want to kind of pick out those stitches, fold back the front binding, the back binding, and we will cut that fabric out. So we have less to work with there in our corner. There we go. I have to credit my mom for sending me the video on how to do that. And I really like it. I really do think that it helps with the bulk in the corner. So now I am going to start folding this over. Kind of do a little finger press here. And I'm going to start folding my binding over. And I use these clips. Use them all the time, but for binding, I fold my binding over, make sure it's kind of tight against the edge here, and then I put it on upside down because I will be sewing on this side. So I want my flat side of my clip to be down. So, just going to do that all the way around. And then I just start working this corner down so that it makes a nice point. And then I, whoops, upside down, I clip that down. That's how I do the corners. I am ready to start binding. I'm going to use this superior bottom line thread as top thread and as the bottom thread, because I'm going to stitch in the ditch right here, and this thread will virtually just disappear. It's so thin that it's almost like invisible thread. Almost. Okay, I'm set up at my machine. I've got my superior bottom line thread in the top and bottom in the bobbin. And then I've got this foot in that has this red arrow that shows me where the needle's going to hit, so I can kind of use that to help line up the stitch in the ditch. I also watch the needle. But that helps. I've got my table in, and I'm just going to start slowly guiding this through so that the needle lands right inside between the binding and the quilt. I've got it on a regular stitch, and it should catch the binding on the other side. Needle down. I get right up in there in that corner and I turn it. So now that I'm at the end, I just want to say that I did have my machine on almost the slowest speed it has, so that I could mash down on my foot pedal and not have to worry about controlling the speed with my foot. So it was just going slow the entire time. So yeah, you can see it's virtually impossible to see that. I got a little out there, but still, from a distance, you're not going to see that. That turned out nice. And the back, there's the back. That thread just kind of disappears, holds that down. Looks good. Yep, I like it. There we go. Binding's done, quilt is done. So there we go, we finished it. It turned out gorgeous, and I hung these up in back of me so you can see them, and I'm so proud of these. I really am. And it's fun because my mom is doing these also, so we get to talk about them and compare, and yeah, and because you put together blocks differently with different colors, they look different in the end. So it is fun to do this with other people. So I want to thank you so much for following along in this journey with me, doing this with me, or just watching me because you couldn't get in. And yeah, subscribe below and hit the notification bell and you'll know when we do the 12th one. So again, thank you so much.